In another documentary of investigation about the Illuminati goddess, it is presented as a spirit of water and spirit of stars. This is in reference to the waters above the heaven dome, of course. And it shows also that they use the calendar, the biblical calendar, but not according to the Christian era, but to the Genesis creation of the light or Analusis year of light. And that their rituals involve using humans as spirit channels. All this taken into present day on political and religious ceremonies and events. And in different publications across the internet, we can see the same narrative of spiritual invocations of the astral entities across different cultures of the earth. It can be seen in the allegedly ancient indigenous painting that showcase creatures from the spiritual astral realm, creators of mankind. In many mythological references is named the constellation of the dog in the galactic anticenter, and other spirits of the heavens that brings buckets with fruits, the pine cone, as if it were the pineal gland, and accompanied by snakes, it's inserted, planted or deposited like an egg in the altar or the tree that also represents a human. And like an investigation channel show us along all the cultures and empires, we can see the representation of this alchemical double-headed eagle, and the same in many cultures, or human or center pillar entities that deposit or take a fruit, an offering, the heavenly spirit that descends upon the individual. A lot of time we can also see these entities with wings, making a reference also to the element of the air, with a fish suit, also making a reference to the spirits of water. Due to that in ancient cosmology, the sky, above the sky, was from the dome and the heavenly waters. It can be seen the representation of the personification of spirits from the stars and waters. It were entities that can be lodged inside a person, that can be lodged or found inside a person. In the infamous Bohemian Grove Club, it is known that they have as master symbol the owl with the lunar disk, where periodically gather political figures and they make sacrifice of fire to this moon entity. A modern example of ritual sacrifice I think we have in the recent case of the 2020 BLM riots, where a victim was executed to ignite a movement, and then he was painted a sunflower that looks like an eclipse. And all the politicians made the gestures that mimic the ancient gods, usually representing the sun. In fact, was around the eclipse of last year, along with the Great Conjunction. And now in 2021, while I finish this video, happened the Astro World disaster, where many people passed away, precisely where people were required to enter with the new gene therapy applied. And the show has all the symbology of an astral sacrifice: cross, eclipse, the phoenix, spirit of fire, pyramid, etc. In fact, both episodes not only had in common the deaths, but also a black star, as is an eclipse, Osiris, etc. A researcher showed us the Gnostic references of the skull and Christ, because the place where he was crucified was called the place of the skull, exactly when an eclipse happened. That would also match with the third eye in the center of the skull, where the physical and spiritual plane crossed. And even in an old animation of Donald Duck from Disney, it is shown how the initiation and occultist societies obtains the knowledge to use from ghosts, from spirits. And in the illustration is shown that the musician uses the harmonics from the stars, the alignments of the proportions, and the employment using instruments as if nature and human itself are marionettes or puppets of these spirit forces. And it's very well known that Disney is constantly making reference to the Illuminati, literally. In the infamous parallel 33, we can see an alignment of events all around the world and with occult and supernatural implications. To begin with, we have the infamous Georgia stones from the New World Order, the test site of the first atomic bomb, the place where it was assassinated the President Kennedy. This is the city of Phoenix with the Valley of the Sun, where it was so famous UFO sightings, the Roswell case of the allegedly UFO that fell, the Los Angeles battle, where supposedly the military shot UFOs, and of course in parallel 33 it is located Hollywood, the magical center of the world, until now, where are made all sorts of spells across the screen. In parallel 33, where the infamous Mount Hermon is, where there is a base of the United Nations, and that is known due to the legend of the Book of Enoch, that is where the fallen angels would have arrived, that Enoch named as fallen stars, and the royal Ark of Enoch as an esoteric initiation. It's a reference to the ancient Sumerian Stargate, and in it can be seen constellation and stars at the same time that the Bible symbology of the creation of the heavens, the earth, the vegetation, animals and men. This astral and Watergate we can see not only in different cultures but also in the CERN, the particle accelerator, in the memorial of the missing towers, and in many movies. In fact, in 2021, an ex-winner of X Factor admitted to the world in a video that of course it's censored all the time. He said that the secret religion of secret societies and people in politics and entertainment is the cult to Lucifer, the fallen star, the fallen angel, and he symbolizes it with the pictures that we already saw. The constellation of the All-Seeing Eye, the fire pyramid, the Egyptian triangle, the sun and moon disk. It is very well known that the celebrities that manage entertainment and communication consumed through screens and networks use the same symbology of the astral eclipse. This is very well known in Hollywood and in the music industry. Both industries dominated by drugs and prostitution. What it leads to question if that supposedly so powerful magic they perform constantly, is it actually of any power if they are constantly losing money, living in envy, and developing constant addictions to endure that environment? So a lot of them are living in deception of what is really going on. That is why we can see that when there are super mystical synchronizations, it's not just that they are behind it, but sometimes it's just the spirit world manifesting in a supernatural way. In a documentary of esoteric history, they explain how this knowledge was kept secret, passing from Egypt to the Druids to the Rosicrucians, and even to artists and scientists like Dante and Da Vinci. It also shows the alignings all around the world, the pyramids, Stonehenge, etc., that we already saw. And the relation between constellations, the diagram of cities, and the magic triangle of Isis, Osiris, and Horus that represent the moon, the moon that eclipses the father sun, and then is resurrecting in the child as the sunbird equivalent to the phoenix or the solar spirit, and all as invocation of the esoteric Messiah. And then it was inherited to the Templars as the Holy Grail, with the same symbology of a man that over his head has a chalice in shape of a pyramid with a astral cross on top. And all this knowledge supposedly passed from hand to hand, symbolized in stone, would be the lost top of the pyramid in the legend fell like a meteorite and was divided to different power organizations, like in the Middle East, the UN, coming from biblical accounts, in a connection with Cain, the evil brother, and all this passed through secret societies, artists like Shakespeare, and politicians such as Benjamin Franklin, Illuminatis of the Revolution, and the theosophical initiated that influenced the politicians that designed the seal of the dollar bill, for example. And in very recent history, it's used as the cornerstone of the master building of the so-called enlightened master Rorik that prophesied in his paintings the new incarnation of the Messiah as the personification of the holder of the astral spirit fire. The same symbology can also be seen in the Congress Library, where it can be seen a Christ dying on the cross but also resurrecting as a phoenix, accompanied with a text saying how low they build those who build under the stars. The eagle is also a biblical reference to Saint John, the prophet of the Apocalypse. The same symbology also is reflected in the apocalyptic cathedral Saint John the Divine, prophet of the Apocalypse, where is seen the Christ hanging between two pillars, so an inverted cross, 9/11, from the destruction of the towers, that we will see was also a ritual of the summoning of the phoenix. We also have the flowers, making a reference to the planetary orbits. The inverted cross from 2001 is a reference to the astrological crossing south of the Milky Way, where the Great Conjunction of 2001 happened, and the upright cross of the Christ above is a reference to the astrological crossing of the north of the Milky Way, where the Great Conjunction of the 2020-2021 happened. In fact, Christ is between the pillars that we already saw are the astral pillars, and all this also accompanied by inscription of the phoenix. In the documentary, they explain that this Christ is a reference to the Zoroastric Messiah, that in the legend they said it was the religion of the three wise men from the Bible, from where it came the red, also seen in Mithras, the solar god that killed the beast, and in an astral deity takes into the sky to transform him into a constellation, representing the astral ascension of human. In another documentary that involves the same researchers, in the legend they expand the mythology of the Titanic stone, signaling the crowning of the second coming of the new coming of the Messiah, or post-apocalyptic return of the Christ. And they trace the origin of the stone to some kind of meteorite that fell on some tower and was inherited some European expeditions involving Jesuits and coming from the biblical legends of the messianic line of Jacob, the Ark of the Covenant, and they claim that this foundational stone is the Masonic top of the pyramid, Old Sinai. And this stone that is passed from generation to generation, it is called the lapis exilis, that has the power to resurrect the phoenix. This also had its biblical reference because, like Christ was represented with the phoenix in medieval times, in the Bible is called a living stone, which was also the same stones of the Templars, using as pillow, reference to Jacob. As a reenactment of the story of Jacob that rests on a stone and see a spiritual ladder to the heavenly spirits. This later would be passed to the Jesuits, like in the original painting of the Messiah, announcing the line of the new coming of the Messiah. Each author of the painting also made a reference between the stone and the third eye. The third eye in relation to the feminine side, as also the personification of the Holy Spirit. This stone, also called the Stone of Destiny, or Jacob's pillow, will also pass to the royalty, because to be crowned, they have to sit upon the stone. It would be the stone of the crown. The stone later would pass from hand to hand, represented in paintings, statues, and they even say that the Jesuits supposedly wanted to take hold of it. Then this knowledge would pass through the Jesuits that were founded by a Kabbalist, and all this supposedly passed through the Theosophical societies such as the so-called Master Rorik, that expresses in his paintings the esoteric Messiah made man, all housed in the Master Building, the esoteric cornerstone, which inauguration was powered by politicians and scientists. Building that is aligned to the apocalyptic cathedral of Saint John Divine, where in the front we can clearly see the waking up of that esoteric Messiah, summoned by the destructions of the towers. And now we're going to see the phoenix. As we already saw, it comes from the not so ancient Egyptian mythology. In fact, there can be seen in the statues of the pharaohs how the solar spirit of Horus is behind the head, influencing the actions and giving power, spiritual authority to rule. This is also illustrated in the Bible as the Holy Ghost descending like a bird and fire on top of Christ and giving him spiritual authority over the creation. And now I can say that understanding all this, it is an illustration of a real phenomenon that I was able to experience. I really don't have any evidence to show because when I was a lot younger, in my teenage years, I practiced a lot of in-depth meditations, of astral meditations, making many visualizations for carrying the energy of light into the top of the spine and the third eye, and I was able to develop an experience where I felt some kind of real energy energizing the back of my head and growing beyond and all around me. It wasn't something that I was able to see, but I really felt it many, many, many times, and that with time I was able to execute without doing special meditation. I don't really have any evidence of this, besides the predictions and projections that have been fulfilled beyond any astrological logic, but instead with advanced intuition, let's call it, that I was able to document for those that have been watching me for a long time. From Egypt, that has the famous Denderak zodiac, like an astrological disc, where through a supposed ritual, the soul of the king was sent across the underworld or astral plane, so he merged with the spirits of nature, of the stars, of beyond, reflected in one of the chapters of the Book of the Dead called Becoming the Phoenix. And with that, he would gain dominion over the spirit world. It even was an esoteric symbol to represent the Christ that we can even see on the Vatican. As we already saw many times, the conference room of the Pope is in the shape of a snake, and in the resurrection statue there is a Christ with a double face of a snake, ascending from a pyramid and from the fire of a nuclear explosion, the same iconography of the Phoenix. In the apocalyptic cathedral Saint John Divine, we can see the pictures of destruction of New York, the falling towers, the apocalypse horses, spirits of death and destruction, and the Kabbalistic tree of life, with the statue of a baby emerging from the horns of a goat. All this is symbology of the moment of the apocalypse where Christ is returning, that also on his head it's emanating or receiving, but mainly possessing, stars and spheres, above a watery spiral of invocation. Very similar to the supernatural lights of 2009, the ones that I already mentioned in the last video, and all this is a reference to the summoning of the Kabbalistic Messiah. And we can even see a statue of the angel ascending from the waters with the crab of Cancer representing the moon, and then a sun, a lion from Leo representing the sun, an actual sun, moon, symbol of the eclipse, and even some giraffes. That of course they also are reflected in astrological constellations. The constellation of the giraffe is next to the dragon, and both surrounding Polaris, the central axis star. Not to mention that this church actually was closed in 2001 and almost during 10 years due to a fire. And it was closed until the year when it happened the signing of precisely those supernatural lights that, as I already explained, I had projected on my series beforehand, months before, and also in synchronization with the Kabbalistic year of Ashin, that it means the eye, in Kabbalistic reference to the eye of divine providence, of spiritual light of God created on Genesis. And inside it has precisely sculptures of the phoenix, literally a phoenix and a golden bird, with images of Indian spirits of fire, the men appearing in the middle of the pillars, appointed by the hand of God, with the name of the place that is a reference to the return of the Christ, meaning the God in the world, and in their windows they show the Christ surrounded by eyes and stars. And of course this church is infamous for making dark shows celebrating Halloween, in a festivity that celebrates the summoning of the spirits of the dead, where it can be seen an skeleton pope summoning up demons and a gigantic dragon. More summoning of the apocalypse than that in a church, I don't believe it's possible, well, except on the Vatican, I think. It's the same church that an architect showed us that although the front of the building is very protected, in the back is falling apart. Like we already saw in the apocalyptic cathedral of St. John Divine, there is a giant sculpture of the Phoenix. In the UN they have big paintings of fire worship, and in their meditation room there is the stone that looks like a pharaonic tomb. You can see the wavy path like a planetary orbit, a circle like an eclipse, and some kind of a spirit of a bird. In the main painting of the main room, you can see a fire circle in the middle, in basic Pisces, the shape that comes from two circles coming together. In the middle, there is the beard that has changed its skin like a snake. It can be seen the beard of the child of the woman, and the first woman, and the one that give her the forbidden fruit. All these along references about the summoning or receiving of sun rays, solar light, heavenly lights, even into an apocalyptic horse in the second coming, and the study of the microcosm and the heaven above with telescopes. In the Denver airport, like we already saw, with shape of pyramids, the demon that he comes out of a briefcase with a leash in reference to a nuclear suitcase, meaning fire, as if it is on the top of a pyramid. The apocalyptic paintings with the rainbow that represents the alchemical steps that pass from death to resurrection, being the last step the phoenix. In fact, we can see that from the fire is unleashed a resurrected beard that was previously extinct over a dead leopard, a symbol of the beast of the apocalypse, over the pyramid of all supposedly dead religions. And we can see that the three religions that are lying in the coffins are the African religion, that is usually depicted as having a contact with the spirits of the dead, the Native American religion, that is usually depicted as summoning the spirits of nature, and the Christian religion, that is usually depicted as summoning the spirits of heaven, and the three are unified in the universal spirit, and can be clearly seen that all the colors are joined in the beard of the spirit of light. To finalize on a melting and merging of weapons, making a reference to the alchemical metal and firework with the beards of peace. This again as a reference to the to the new coming of the biblical Messiah. And in another painting of this airport, we can see coming up from the depths of the earth a red light, meaning of fire, a spirit, a nature spirit that connects the heavens and the earth next to a human baby that is very red, by the way, also next to a bird, at the same time that it receives spirits from the stars. All this aligned to the sun, with a diamond shape that is what is formed inside the Vesica Piscis when two circles, like the sun and moon, get together. Meaning all summonings to the spirit of the phoenix so it can be channeled on earth. And in the floor it also had an eclipse, and of course the infamous Apocalypse horse with eyes of fire. In the Bank of America we can see a triptych painting that were painted by an artist that mainly has a history of portraying Christical and biblical accounts, showing in his crucifixion painting the eclipse, the red divine pregnancy, the Holy Ghost, and the spiritual resurrection. We can see minor excavations with fire in the underworld and a red giant that was also reflected in the event that was known worldwide, where they were rescued from the underground 33 miners using a capsule named Phoenix, meaning a ritual to dig up the phoenix. And the capsule, of course, has the same colors: white, red, and blue. White symbol of the moon, red symbol of the sun, and in the middle we see that is where the individual is coming out. A red giant is also called the sun when supposedly it will achieve his final state, bringing the apocalypse when it melts everything. The red sleeper is also a reference to Jacob's dream and John's apocalyptic dream. Both present spirit symbolism represented in stars, especially because the miners are 12, exactly like the zodiac signs and Christ's disciples. And the painting continued to show how the spirit of fire moves across the sky in the heavens, while in the world is chaos and people protecting from a plague, and it ends up with all the symbology that we already saw. To unleash the phoenix, the letters to the heaven, the eclipse, the man, the woman, the pyramid, and the biblical bush on fire, representing the God entering the world, the spirit manifestation, just beside someone dressed with red, in the red floor, the reddish sky, and a completely red banner that is covering one eye, that as we already saw is the rubedo, the red is the last step on alchemy, that summons the red king. After the white queen summons the red king, the phoenix. And as we can see, the last step, the golden child, many speculate that this character at the end is Trump or the prince or someone else. No, what it actually represents is just the black child, the white woman, and the red man are precisely a reference to the alchemical steps that give the crown to the ruler. The symbology of the eclipse is actually very simple. Visually, you can see that it actually forms a ring of fire and a gate into darkness.